Okay friends, one of the first things we need to do to start our job is to safely raise and support the rear of the vehicle so the wheel's off the ground. After that, let's go ahead and remove all 5 of our 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now the next thing we need to do to remove our sway bar link would be to go ahead and use a 14mm wrench. I'm going to come right up to this upper nut. We'll just get that right on there. Now we can go ahead and remove this as well. We've got our rubber bushing and the flat washer. Now at this point we have the top aspect of this taken apart, so when we go ahead and lower down this arm, it's going to draw the whole sway bar link down and out of the sway bar right here. So that means that I don't necessarily need to continue, in exception of if you found that your sway bar link could fall out. Ours in particular is frozen inside this area. I'm going to be replacing it for another video, but this is a perfect stopping point if you're just doing the shock. Now at this point, I'm going to want to put a jack right underneath the control arm, generally in approximately this area right here. Essentially, I just want to go ahead and try to apply a little bit of upward pressure on this, and now we can continue on by starting to remove our bolts. Now we have this outer bolt right here that we're going to remove using a 24mm socket. The nut for it is going to be located on the forward aspect, but this one actually has something that holds the nut for you. So I'll use my 21mm here, remove this bolt, and then we'll continue on to this bolt right here, fully remove this one. There's that nut, set that aside. There's that one. Inspect your threaded area and the shanked area. Assuming it looks good, set it aside, move along. Now for this one, I'll use my 24mm wrench on the forward aspect here. Hold that nut. Let's fully remove this bolt. Inspect it, set it aside. Now we can move along to this one right here. I'll use my wrench on the inboard aspect right there, and then we'll start loosening the bolt. All right, that's loose enough. Now we can start lowering this down. Now that I have these 2 bolts out and the far one in the center of the vehicle loosened up, the next thing that I always like to do is just put a strap right around this area here. The next thing that we're going to do is continue up along the top of the shock. You're going to find 3 mounting nuts for this. What we need to do is start loosening them enough to the point that we can move this, and then we can go ahead and let this down. Once it's down and out of the way, we'll continue on by fully removing each of the nuts. To access these, I'm going to use a wrench to try to get it loosened up. You might be able to use a ratchet, it's completely up to you, but use a 13mm either way. Now with all those loose, I'll go ahead and get my strap right out of the way. Now we can see if we can get this to separate. Start separating this. There we are. Now we'll set this down and we can continue on by removing the rest of our upper nuts, and then we can remove our rear shock. Okay. That last nut off of there. There it is, friends. All right, friends, now it's time to install our brand new rear shock. Let's make sure that we line each of our studs up with the corresponding holes in the shock tower here. Just go ahead and slide this right up and in. Once everything's seated properly, let's continue on with our 3 nuts up on top. We'll just start each of them in and then leave it at that point. Now let's continue on to putting the shock into the lower arm here. I'm just going to go ahead and line this up. We'll take our bolt that comes through. This comes through from the rear towards the front. See if we can get that started in there. Leave that loose, continue on over here. Now let's go ahead and put our jack underneath this area again. We're going to continue on by jacking up the lower control arm so we can line up this area as well. Now we can take our bolt and our nut, start the bolt right through here. grab that nut. You've got the little piton. It needs to fit into the corresponding slot on the backside here. Now let's also start this nut on there for this bolt here. All right, so now it's going to be time to start snugging these up and then torquing them. Something that I'm going to mention is you want to make sure that you still have pressure upward on this control arm. Essentially, we want the suspension to feel as though the wheels are still on the ground and the whole weight of the vehicle is on it as well. So essentially, this would be the ride height position. After that, you can continue on by snugging these up. Now let's get up top. We're going to bottom out all of these mounting nuts as well. Once we have them all bottomed out, let's continue on by torquing them to 26 foot-pounds. If you have a hard time getting your torque wrench inside here to torque these to 26 foot-pounds, I just go ahead and make sure that they're nice and tight with whatever ratchet I can fit in there. Feels good. Let's get the jack out from under here. Now let's grab that other bushing with the piton facing down. One of those washers, put it right up along the top there. Now we can take our locking nut. You want to look at it. On one side, you're going to be able to find a neoprene locker. It almost looks like plastic. On the other side, not so much. You want to have that neoprene facing up. Get that right on there. Now at this point, we can continue on by tightening this. When we do it, we only want to go until you can see the bushings hitting up against the metal areas. So right up against here, you can tell that there's a lot of gap. You don't want to have any gap, but you also don't want to continue tightening until these are completely flattened, in which case they're going to be damaged and you're going to have to replace them early. Now let's have a look at this. I can see that all of my bushings that are right out in the open are touching just as they should be. This one you can tell is sitting at a little bit of an angle, but once I start bringing this control arm up, these are going to sit pretty much flush. I have no movement coming in between the sway bar link and the bar itself or even the control arm. I feel confident this looks good. Now we can get the wheel back up on here. We'll start all of our lug nuts on, bottom them out, get the wheel back on the ground, and then torque the lug nuts to 100 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friends, we got our part in there. What's left to do now? Now you want to go ahead and do the same thing on the other side of the vehicle. It's pretty much the exact same process. After that, go ahead and safely take your vehicle down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.